Thank you. So I'm going to discuss mainly about transfusion management and not so much about pro-hemostatic agents because they will be discussed secondly by Marcel Levy. First, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor, of course. So, massive bleeding could be defined as an uncontrolled and potentially life-threatening bleeding. It could occur in a large variety of situations, including severe trauma, postpartum hemorrhage, major surgery, gastrointestinal bleeding, and liver transplantation. Ongoing massive bleeding could worsen with acquired deficiency of coagulation called coagulopathy, and this coagulopathy is associated with a poorer outcome and a higher mortality. For instance, coagulopathy during trauma is associated with a fourfold increase in mortality. The war on Iraq has significantly improved our knowledge about coagulopathy and about massive hemorrhage, and that's why the coagulopathy of the trauma becomes a kind of model for a best understanding. For many years, we believed that coagulopathy was induced by DIC, disseminated intravascular coagulation, and promoted by dilution, by both fluid loading and massive transfusion of red blood cell concentrates alone, inducing hypothermia and promoting acidosis associated with shock. The association of acidosis, hypothermia, and coagulopathy represents the famous lethal triad. In fact, after that, the war on Iraq began, many people died, and our knowledge improved. Now, it becomes clear that acute traumatic coagulopathy is, in fact, an endogenous coagulopathy resulting from the combination of tissue injury and shock and driven by the degree of tissue hypoperfusion, leading to a massive activation of protein C with systemic anticoagulation as well as hyperfibrinolysis and platelet dysfunction. Secondly, acidosis, hypothermia, dilution can develop, but in fact, there are mainly complications of this endogenous coagulopathy. So it becomes clear that this trauma-induced coagulopathy precedes all therapeutic management. In fact, it appears very early, as demonstrated by FLOCA. You can see here a study assessing the hemostasis parameters of severe trauma on scene just after the injury, before fluid loading, before transfusion, and secondly, in hospital admission. The authors conclude 2 points. The first one is that coagulopathy appears very early at the scene of the accident, before transfusion, before therapeutic management. That was the first point. And the second one is that coagulopathy cannot spontaneously improve. So for this reason, it becomes evident that this coagulopathy should be treated immediately. Systemic anticoagulation induced a reduction in coagulation factor activity. All factors are concerned. So it is quite logical to supplement all of them, and for that, plasma appears as the best therapeutic option. You can observe here that the decrease in factor V is even more marked, and the only way to supplement factor V is through plasma transfusion because factor V concentrates are not available either alone or in association. So, to correct this systemic anticoagulation by providing a physiological source of coagulation factor, the best option is to increase the volume of plasma infusion. When 30 milliliter per kilo is compared to 50 milliliter per kilo, obviously there is an increase in the final concentrations of coagulation factor. Increasing plasma infusion also addresses the problem of the fall in fibrinogen concentration observed during major trauma and major bleeding, because plasma also contains fibrinogen and approximately 400 milligrams of fibrinogen per unit. Advantages of plasma are not limited to coagulation factors, because plasma also contains more than hundreds of proteins, including immunoglobulins and albumin, which produces a volume expansion with high oncotic pressure, which is a point of interest with this situation of hypovolemic shock due to massive hemorrhage. In fact, increasing the volume of plasma infusion is very similar to increasing ratio, that is to say plasma to red blood cell ratio. And Borgman was the first one to suggest a benefit to this high ratio during massive transfusion. He performed a retrospective analysis from a military registry, including 246 trauma patients with massive transfusion in a support hospital during the war on Iraq. And he studied the correlation between ratio and mortality. And I suppose that you know this famous graph showing that patients transfused with high ratio presented a lower mortality than those transfused with medium or low ratio. After that, several studies confirm these preliminary results, studies from cohort showing again the statistical association between high ratio and decrease in mortality in both military and civilian trauma populations. This was then confirmed in a meta-analysis of Mohamed Hassan Murad. This meta-analysis was performed with studies including patients undergoing massive transfusion, and this meta-analysis concludes that plasma transfusion with high ratio is with ratio greater than 1 plasma to 3 red blood cells, was associated with a decrease in mortality. And of course, there are some limitations to these studies. They are mainly retrospective studies, so they are exposed to methodological bias with missing data, with analytical bias dominated by the survival one. However, we consider that for today, these data are enough to recommend the use of high ratio. As you can see here, on the most recent update of the European guideline regarding the management of major trauma, suggesting that an optimal plasma to red blood cell ratio should be at least of 1 plasma for 2 red blood cells. And then, what about platelets in this massive transfusion? The role of platelets remains quite difficult for today to understand, because on one hand, admission platelet count is usually for the major part of the trauma patient within the normal range. However, it's not enough, and we should not underestimate the place of platelets for 2 reasons. The first one is that the platelet count on admission after trauma is inversely correlated with the severity of trauma, as you can see here, but also inversely correlated with morbidity and mortality. This is the first point. And for the second point is that the dysfunction of platelet has not been explored a lot. And last year, this paper was published showing a platelet dysfunction appearing very early after the injury, before transfusion, before fluid loading, and this platelet dysfunction was continuing during the trauma management. So, for these 2 reasons, for thrombocytopenia on one hand and platelet dysfunction on the second hand, we can have the idea that platelet transfusion could be useful in the management of severe trauma. This hypothesis is in fact supported by several data. This is a summary of the studies assessing the place of platelet transfusion in the initial management of trauma patients. And these studies suggest that increasing platelet transfusion is of benefit for the patient. The next step, in fact, the next question is about the ratio between platelet and red blood cell unit. You can see here that, in fact, this is exactly the same as for plasma. When you increase the ratio between platelet and red blood cell, again, the mortality decreases. However, data regarding the ratio between plasma and red blood cell were weak, and for the ratio between platelet and red blood cell, they are even weaker with the same limitation. So it's quite difficult to recommend strongly a management regarding platelet transfusion. And that's why, in France, we propose to transfuse platelets during massive bleeding with high ratio, whereas the European guidelines on the top prefer to recommend to monitor platelet count and to transfuse platelet only regarding the threshold. But in fact, increasing ratio is probably not enough because ratio is a time-dependent variable and is probably not the good metric. It could be, in fact, the first step of a pedagogic approach, but it fails in catching the time measure of blood administration. For example, if you transfuse 10 red blood cell concentrates and then 6 hours or 8 hours after 10 fresh frozen plasma. Of course, this is not equivalent to the same total amount of blood products transfusing with alternating red blood cell and fresh frozen plasma, even if at the end of the day you will have the same 1-to-1 ratio. So a lot of attention should be given to the timing of the administration of blood products. And the importance of acting quickly with a very short therapeutic window has been underlined by De Biasi in this retrospective cohort study of massively transfused patients. They studied the correlation between survival and the use of red blood cell and plasma by hour regarding both ratio and deficit. Deficit is in fact the number of red blood cells minus the number of fresh frozen plasma. For example, if at the end of the first hour you have transfused 4 red blood cells and 2 plasma, so the deficit is of 2. So they studied this correlation and they demonstrated that there was a strong relationship between survival and aggressive plasma transfusion. You can see here, that at the end of the first hour, the patients with the highest deficit are also the patients with the highest mortality. So this study emphasizes the importance of beginning without delay platelet transfusion and plasma transfusion, in fact, and within the first hour, and also emphasizes the importance of the immediate delivery of the first blood products. Reducing transfusion delay could be achieved through careful, constructive, massive transfusion protocols with local agreement with the blood bank to make products available as soon as possible. These protocols should define the circuit of the blood product inside of the hospital, as well as the role and task of the involved care professionals. These protocols should also define the number of blood products as well as the transfusion sequence, and to take into account the concept of ratio, the blood products should be issued into sets called transfusion package or trauma pack. These trauma pack will include a predefined number of red blood cells, of plasma and platelet unit in order to transfuse them in parallel to a bleeding trauma patient and to repeat this transfusion of package until hemostasis is achieved. This protocol, in fact, raises the question of the transfusion sequence because packs with different amount of blood product and different ratios have been described, and it is more the implementation of these packs which improves survival rather than the composition of this pack. So for today, we don't know what is the best composition of the first pack, neither of the second one. In fact, the immediate availability of plasma for the first pack is the best option to be able to transfuse, to massively transfuse patients with a 1:1 ratio within the first hour. Because, in fact, sewing plasma is time-consuming. So we have to think about the best option to be able to have this 1:1 ratio at the end of the first hour. So different options have been considered in the literature and in countries. The use of sewed AB group plasma is probably the most common one. You can see that here. It's the most common because it's the easiest, in fact. So you can have thawed plasma stored in the fridge, in the trauma center, for immediate availability together with O group red blood cell. And this option is already used in several European and American centers. The use of radio wave-based thawing technology allows thawing in less than 6 minutes. However, this is more anecdotal and exposes the patient to some thromboembolic complications. My favorite option is the freeze-dried plasma because, thanks to this method, plasma is immediately available because it could be reconstituted in less than 6 minutes. It's already used by the Belgian and the French army, as well as the Australian Red Cross. The main problem of this system is the price, because these plasma are quite expensive. Just before the end, the question is, for which population should we promote this I ratio? Because, as you noticed, studies promoting the interest and the benefit of I ratio included only patients with a massive transfusion. So we are not able to translate directly these results to other populations and mainly to non-massively transfused patients. If we go back to the meta-analysis, the second part of the meta-analysis regards patients without massive transfusion. So the meta-analysis, the second part, was performed with studies including patients undergoing surgery without massive transfusion, and results were opposite to the previous one. As you can see here, patients transfused with I ratio this time has no benefit to the I ratio on mortality. And there is no benefit, and at the same time there is an increasing report of adverse effect associated with I ratio. Several studies have shown a correlation between I ratio and complications such as hospital infection, such as pneumonia, such as transfusion-related acute lung injury, and ARDS. Such in this study where INABA assessed the impact of plasma transfusion in trauma patients who do not require massive transfusion. And you can see the results. Transfusing plasma in these patients is associated with an increase in complications without any benefit regarding mortality. And moreover, on the graph, you can see that increasing the volume of plasma is associated with an increase in complication. So, as a conclusion, our knowledge about coagulopathy, about massive bleeding and massive transfusion has significantly evolved during the last year. Now there is a growing body of evidence to support that I ratio improve outcome, but only for specific patients, that is to say patients with massive bleeding and with massive transfusion. For this patient, ratio represents only a small aspect of massive bleeding management, and now we have to focus on immediate delivery of blood products through pre-established protocols. So platelet and plasma to red blood cell ratio only matter to define the content of packs immediately available within the golden hour for massively transfused patients. Thank you.